So scripturally, we have in Proverbs, it says, as iron sharpens iron. And I think that's what we're talking about here. It's iron sharpening iron. The fact that as sisters or as friends, whatever you want to call it, we are supposed to be building each other up. So if I can't say to you, hey, can we do this in a different way, or have a vulnerable conversation with you where I'm sharing how I feel, maybe about something that you said to me, and we're not able to communicate, then are we really friends? Are we really call each other sisters? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it should be surface, like what Shan was saying about having people that are just friends. In that, there's no building up that's happening, there's no growing that's happening, there's no journeying that's happening. Does anyone have an example or like a memory of when you would say your sister has sharpened you? They've maybe had to correct you on something. It could even be encouragement, to be honest, because encouragement is sharpening as well. I think sometimes we might see it as the negative. It doesn't always have to be the negative, and even in the negative, we're bringing it to the positive. Does anyone have any examples of iron sharpening iron?
I think it's really important when your sisters are on the same path as you. If you're both seeking God together and you're both trying to get to a destination, it's better to be doing it with someone. So when you're feeling weak and you're not necessarily praying or reading your Bible, your sister calls you, it's like, sis, let's pray. Sis, let's read together. And it just encourages you, it just helps you along the way. I think it's really important.
I think so. I feel like in school. Sometimes we can have a thwarted perspective of ourselves, and it's always good to have somebody there who can see you how God sees you. So whenever I pray, when I meet anybody, I say, Lord, help me to see them how you see them. And so in sisterhood, that means either way, if you one day are thinking, oh my gosh, for example, insecure about the way you look or your voice, or even the other things like in work, there could be things going on, and then you're thinking the worst, maybe you're fearful, anxious, and then somebody comes along, your sister, and is saying, hey, look, have you thought about thinking about it this way? Or, actually, I feel like it could be maybe more about this. It's sometimes the way that you communicate, not just saying it, because you can come across rude and harsh, and that actually can push people away, but saying things in love with an understanding that communication is more than words can definitely help, and just sharing God's perspective, it's powerful.
That's so good.
My example will be with Afiya actually. So recently, we were just going through similar things. All good, it's all good.
Always.
But we were just, it seems like we're always going through like similar life stages, and we're just going through similar things. And I think after many conversations, we were like, okay, we need to pray about this regularly and hold each other accountable, but also encourage each other. And I think it's so important in sisterhood to know the purpose of why you're sisters and why you're friends with certain people, and each sort of relationship will look different, and that's okay. But I think it's just really important to pray and be intentional about, but why am I in this friendship? What am I here to give, but also what am I here to receive? And being sort of secure enough in knowing that the way you love or the way you give isn't always necessarily going to be given the same way, but being secure in that there's still purpose in that.
That's strong. Does someone have their hand up? Oh, I thought you had your hand up. I definitely agree with that. Definitely. That security in praying and understanding the purpose of your relationship. And I think that doesn't just matter for sisterhood per se. That's every single relationship. I think it's important for us to know what is the purpose of this relationship. I remember when we met Cherise, we always said that it's divine connection, because you had been praying for divine connection, and then we went to the conference, Newty's Women's Conference, and we ended up staying in a hotel. And I remember that night, I think you were sick. You were sick. So it was like this hotel room, and there were 2 beds, and Zoe was sick, and we were like, okay, nah. And we had just met, so Zoe was like,
we shared the bed.
The first time we met, we literally just shared the bed, and it was weird because we both had dreams about each other.
Similar dreams.
Very similar dreams, and that was like divine connection. Like, God answers prayer through people, and you are definitely an example of that, because in our sisterhood, in our friendship, you've definitely been able to hold me accountable on what you were saying about asking God to show you the person the way He sees them. Like, when this girl speaks to me, she will she's very prophetic, right? And she will look at you and speak into your life and over your life. And sometimes I could maybe have her down there. She will message me, and she's like on point to what it is that is happening and like what God is saying. So thank you for that. But for real, it's so important to like understand the purpose and the nature of your relationship, because also then when things get hard, you know it's worth fighting for. If you don't know the purpose, then it's like, oh well, okay, cool, cancel culture. That is a big thing right now. Everybody's getting cancelled. Why?
There ain't gonna be nobody left. Cancel us all then.
So yeah, purpose is definitely very, very, very important in our relationships. So another question I have: what do we think about sisterhood in cultures? That's pop culture, society, what we see on Instagram, social media. What do you think about sisterhood?
I think it's in terms of general culture outside of kind of religion and Christ, whatever. There's been a resurgence in it essentially,
Okay.
which is interesting. Yeah.
Explain that, please.
Well, if you really want to talk about pop culture in general, a resurgence of third wave feminism, people come, lots of communities. I'm not necessarily part of them, but I sit around them on Instagram to do body positivity, women lifting women up, because essentially the world wants to position you in a certain way and is handling against you. So it's just like global solidarity and sisterhood in that
I have
sense.
noticed that actually.
And I think that kind of actually feeds back into the religious sense and stuff like what you do, because you have that same global community, so it's kind of tied in that way.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Somebody else was saying something here on this side.
I had it, but it's gone again.
Oh dear.
I think sometimes we see the negative side of it, especially with like the rise of social media. I think sometimes we can see just the competitiveness, the sisterhood of, okay, we're in the same field or trying to do the same thing or got the same audience, so I need to be better than you, I need to make sure that I'm ahead of the game. And I think it's just sad to see that and to know that it doesn't actually have to be that way. I think it would just be great to see like just a community of women that just rise up and say, no, I'm going to encourage you. Like, even if we are doing similar things, I'm going to support you, I'm going to encourage you, I'm going to look for opportunities even to push you forward. You know, God says that we should think of ourselves less than others. And I feel like it's just something that is countercultural, but it's so powerful.
Yeah. You were going to say something.
I was going to say, I agree with what Sharifa was saying about there being a resurgence of sisterhood like in the secular world. But one thing that I have noticed about one thing that I have noticed about sisterhood in like the secular world and like especially that's tied to feminism and stuff is that it's kind of like us against men sort of thing. Which I guess that's one of the cons. I understand why, because patriarchy, whatever, cool. But I guess that's one of the negatives.
I'd like to comment on that and provide a counterpoint. I don't necessarily think it's against men, but more about the culture surrounding them, and I think the resurgence of sisterhood in that sense kind of helps them in a way as well, because it's kind of about talking stuff about not forcing them to be perceived in a certain way and then us to be perceived in a certain way, so they can just be themselves as well. So I know what you mean, how it seems like we're going to do this, so it's against them, but I feel like it's more of the culture that's created, like, does that make sense? I don't know. Yeah.
That's fine.
So I feel like, well, from what I've observed, the world has become very individualistic, and so sisterhood is almost foreign to some people because they're so used to having to maybe even survive by themselves, or people have been through a lot of things which has caused them to be isolated, alienated, and not being able to trust people. And so though we can have a sense of community, sometimes it's just almost like a homeless person on the street. They're not alone, but they are alone at the same time. So a lot of people are chasing their own dreams, doing it for them, and there's you often see one person in the picture and how they've got it made and everything, but we all know that what we see on a screen is just not just a representation, but a representation of what actually is. So I think with sisterhood, I hope that we're able to show more of us being together and demonstrate what it looks like to actually have sisterhood.
Yeah.
So, for example, this is a perfect example because, you know, I hope even here we'll be able to share an encouragement for each other towards the end, just to show people who've never seen it before, because we can't just come from a place of having known, because we're fortunate enough to know what it's like. But others, they have no idea. They have no idea. So yeah, that's my prayer, that they will see that in the mainstream, the demonstration of people working together and not just like ad hoc, you know. But even in celebrity culture, I hope to see that more too.
Yeah, it's true.
That's interesting what you say, actually, because it made me think, like how you said you actually just see that one person in the picture, so maybe that proliferation, that rise in sisterhood on social media isn't necessarily real. It doesn't really like translate into things like this, which is kind of like a real representation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's more performative.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it is sometimes, especially with celebrity culture, a lot of it is a show, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, what can we do or what can we present that people are gonna latch onto? But it's not there. The heart isn't actually there. The truth of heart isn't there. The sincerity isn't there. I want to circle back to something that you said, Temi. You were speaking about how we see the negativity of sisterhood is represented negatively in social media, and we have people comparing themselves, and it's in a competition, we're in this race, and if you do this, I've got to do it better, and if you sing that note, then I'm going to sing a note higher. Do you know what I mean? So Theodore Roosevelt has this quote: "Comparison is the thief of joy," and I think that I don't know if I have a favorite quote, but it's one that I like, because when I look at it, it really opens my eyes to the reality of things. Like, comparison really is the thief of joy. If we are continually looking to our left or to our right and comparing, oh, well, she can do this better, or she does that like that, or her clothes are nice, and you miss out on the joy and the beauty of what you have been given. One of the main messages of this channel is that we are made in God's image. Made in God's image, but we are made to uniquely reflect that image. And when we say uniquely reflect, that means that I'm going to reflect Christ differently from how Shan is, or Zoe, or Nick. Like, it's going to be completely different because we are uniquely made. Yes, all in his image, so we're on a level playing field, but it's going to be unique to me as to how God has created me, my DNA, my design. And so when I'm comparing, I miss out on that. There's so much that I miss out on, and it's like you're too busy looking at the other rather than looking at yourself and appreciating and valuing what it is that God has given. So I guess my question on that is there a time, or has there been a time, is now even a time where you feel like you're comparing yourself to people? Because I know for me personally, there have been times where I've had to take a break from social media, because I'll be scrolling and I'll see something, and all of a sudden I feel something in my heart, and I'm like, no, let's just take a break right here, because this doesn't feel too, you know. So yeah, how about you guys?
Absolutely.
You say no,
it's something that I've struggled with, I think, sort of through puberty, and then just becoming a woman. And you realise that, especially after you finish like uni, you've done school, college, uni, and then you come out to the big world, and it's like, oh, okay, there's no instructions on how to do this anymore. So yeah, I've definitely had times when I've been comparing myself to others, and I think now as I get older and more secure in myself, like you were saying, it gives God now a chance to show me, Sarah, this is what I have for you. Like, can't you see that I've made you like this? So things like my voice has always been my biggest insecurity, but God is using it for His glory.
Yeah,
you know
He
what I
is.
mean? And I honestly feel like He's showing me that the very flaws that I think are weird, or the things that I want to hide, are the things that God is really bringing out of me now. And that's because I've stopped looking to my left and to my right to this sister and this auntie and this mother. You know, it's about me and God and my journey with God. And as we journey with God, will be a blessing to others so that they can see that, wow, like, you know, God's got something for me too. Like, if she can do it, then, you know, wow, what's God gonna do for me? And that's, there's so much power in that.
That's beautiful.
And you've got a beautiful voice. I was listening when I was watching it.
Yeah. Tell her again, please.
Beautiful voice. Your greatest insecurity is your greatest strength.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, there has to be, well, I think more recently there has to be sort of like a daily renewing of the mind in terms of like comparison. I'm not really someone that puts myself out there at all, and so I found that like when I started Moment, so I started baking last year. I didn't start my Insta page until March of this year, and the reason for that was because I didn't feel like I was good enough to put myself out there. And so many people were like, Kayla, like people may have seen my cakes on the side, may have sent some to like some close family or friends, and like, Kayla, you need to start Insta page, you need to start this, you need to do this. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm not ready. No way. Because people are going to come to me and ask me for something, I'm going to give them nonsense, you know what I mean? But I think even now, you know, there has to be that renewing, because I see other people's, what they put out, and I'm like, well, I need to get there. What I'm putting out there isn't good enough, you know? I need to hurry up and get to a certain standard, do you know what I mean? So it, you know, it is that place of also vulnerability when you have something that you're putting out there. But I think what you need to remember is, if God has called you to it, there's certain people that is for anyway. Do you know what I mean? And that's something that you just have to remember.
I think that's really true, just having that sense of self, which can be reinforced by sisterhood if you circle back. Because in essence, like, social media is kind of, well, it's like to gamify your insecurity, so you keep on clicking, so you keep on engaging. So you can't really buy into that, you have to buy into stuff outside of that.
Like what?
Like what?
Like sister.
That was the easy way out.
No, but that cultivating a sense of community, to be fair, outside of that, because you can't really use it to reinforce yourself. I think, and I personally, I don't like social media, to be honest. I think because I'm of the age where I grew up kind of when it started to blow up and when it was really popular, I'm able to step outside of it, and I don't really like the way it can make other people feel, and the way that they kind of mess with your emotions, because it's really bad for comparison, like especially when Sarah was saying when you leave uni you see what everyone else is doing. So yeah, I personally think like offline communities is probably the way to go for the future, especially for the next generation, to be fair, it'd be worse for them.
No, I agree with that. Me being like probably one of the youngest here.
The youngest. I've seen the effect it has on like people my age. Like, you look, oh my gosh, so and so is getting a car. Oh my gosh, so and so's got this boyfriend. Oh my gosh, they've moved into this flat. Like, you're looking at people and you're thinking, oh my gosh, like, I don't have that. I'm still here. I don't got no money. You know, I'm still, and it kind of makes you feel, what's going on for me, and like, how come they've got this and I haven't? And I think that's why it's really important to find yourself in Christ. Find out who you are in Him.